listening to the Terrific Teacherpreneur, a podcast for teachers looking to grow a successful online business. Your host, Alex, was able to transform her Teachers Pay Teachers store from a small side hustle into a profitable full-time business. She now helps other teachers do the same. Listen along for actionable tips and helpful wisdom about business and marketing as a teacherpreneur. Here's your host, Alex.
Hello and welcome to the Terrific Teacherpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Alex, so welcome if you're a newer listener. But for those of you who've been around a while, you know that I love chatting about TPT. In this episode, it's not going to be about marketing or anything, it's going to be TPT specific. I want to talk about thumbnails versus previews. So if you are a newer seller listening, you are going to definitely benefit from this episode because I'm really going to be breaking down what the difference is between these two listing features, and they can be kind of confusing. But if you're a seasoned seller, I would still give this episode a listen. I still think you're going to get some stuff from this. I think as seasoned sellers, we tend to tell ourselves that we kind of know everything when it comes to TPT, and we just want to learn about more advanced topics like email lists or whatever, and that's fine. It's totally okay to want to learn those new areas, but there's a lot of listings in our stores that often are kind of subpar, that we don't really want to admit that there's like these old resources, these terrible listings, horrible previews, bad descriptions and stuff. And like sometimes episodes like this can kind of be that gentle nudge to go, okay, I actually do need to do some updates, because basically, even though you are a seasoned seller and you know a lot of stuff, there's a lot of resources in your store that don't reflect that. And there'll be these resources that are kind of like what you made when you were a new seller, or they may actually be from when you were a newer, smaller seller. So yeah, in some ways, sometimes it's really helpful to listen to this and to go, okay, I actually need to make sure my store reflects the knowledge that I now have. So it might be a little push for you to do some updates, but it also there might just be some tips in here that will help you. But anyway, thumbnails versus previews. The reason I want to talk about this is because it can be kind of confusing. When we look at any other online marketplace, Etsy, eBay, Amazon, like whatever, and you're buying anything online, there's always thumbnails. Like the listings are pretty much very similar. They always have titles and thumbnails and descriptions and prices and stuff. And so we know that thumbnails are like these images to sort of give buyers an idea of what this actual product is. But TPT is unique in the fact that it also has this other feature, these previews that supposedly are optional. Like when you're on the listing upload section, it's like, product previews. It's kind of like this optional thing. You don't have to do it in order to like publish a listing, but to me, they feel like pretty non-negotiable. But anyway, so they can be kind of confusing. And I've seen a lot of people post in Facebook groups sort of saying, oh, well, what is the actual difference? How do I make them different? What is the purpose of one versus the other? And I've seen a lot of people use the same images for both their thumbnails and previews, which I don't want to sound like harsh, but I think it's just a terrible idea. And I have mentioned that before, so we'll dive into that a little bit. And I think that will help you realize, okay, look, these are two very different things. They have very different purposes. I can't just repeat the same thing again. So if you're one of those people that has, accidentally kind of been a bit lazy and maybe just like reuse your thumbnails as your preview, I'm hoping this will convince you not to. But yeah, let's start off talking about thumbnails. So what are they? What are the features here? Like, what's a good thumbnail? Why do you need to like make it a certain way? And then I'll talk more about, previews and how they're different. So thumbnails are literally 3 images. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. 3 images. TPT asks you to literally select a file that is like a JPEG or a PNG up to 4 MB. And it is not supposed to be a description. So please, I won't go into this too much because I have done episodes on this where I've ranted about this. Please don't use it as like an opportunity to throw up a PowerPoint slide, like a white blank slide, where you just type a bunch of information like this product has differentiation. It's not a description. You won't see that kind of behavior on other marketplaces because that's not what a thumbnail is for. It's not a description. It's not for words. It's for visuals. So, if you want to kind of like see what I'm talking about, like just spend even like 5 minutes looking at some other marketplaces. What are they doing for thumbnails? Okay, they're showing an actual photograph of a model wearing a dress, a child playing with a toy, and this is what the mug or cup that you're about to buy is going to look like. Like, here is what the laptop looks like that you're about to purchase. Like, it's a picture of the item that you want to purchase because as a buyer, you want to know what something looks like. So these 3 thumbnails are 3 images of your resource. And some people get confused between cover and thumbnails, like they kind of call them all thumbnails, but I call a cover a cover. The first image that you upload is called the main cover when you're on TPT. That's, a slightly different situation. The three thumbnails, again, which I don't know why TPT says this is optional, is not optional. You need to have these three thumbnails. It's 3 images. Now, product photography is the best way to go, but if you can't photograph a resource for some reason, that's not always an option. Mock-ups are fine. Screenshots are technically okay as well. There are other options here, but overall, your goal is to visually showcase your resource. And now I want to break down a little bit about kind of what the purpose is here. On other platforms, your 3 thumbnails are the only way that you can visually show what your resource looks like. Because you can write a lengthy description all about this thing you're selling, but the buyer needs to see, hey, a picture of it to know if it's going to look right for them in their house or whatever. So that's kind of like the only way to visually show it. With TPT, we're actually going to have 2 opportunities here to visually showcase things. So, what is the difference with a thumbnail and a preview? I personally think that thumbnails are a little glimpse into your resource. So you're kind of piquing the buyer's interest and saying, oh, hey, look, this is kind of roughly what it looks like. This is a sort of an idea of what you're getting. And if they are intrigued, they can learn more. So I think one of the reasons that we have to have previews on TPT is because we aren't just selling this physical good. If you are selling a t-shirt, like some kind of homemade, hand designed, printed like t-shirt thing, you can just go on Etsy and upload a thumbnail of what it looks like. Here is a model wearing the t-shirt, or here's a t-shirt on a flat surface. Done, right? All finished. With TPT, we're not selling like this physical good that you can just quickly take a photo of and that's the end of it. We sell these quite often involved large PDFs and digital resources. You could have like 50 different pages. And so the issue becomes, well, how on earth do I showcase that on 3 little square images? It's just not possible. And so the dynamic here is very different. And that's why we have to have the preview option. So it's like, well, we still need to have thumbnails, but how does that differ? Just think of your thumbnails as like the tip of the iceberg. Like there's just like this little peek, like sneak peek. Hey, this is what one of the worksheets looks like. This is, the sort of quality of my work. This is the way that it would be filled in by a student. This is kind of what one of the activities is. And the buyer's like, oh, that looks kind of fun. My kids would like that, They like looking through and kind of go, And the preview is the opportunity for them to learn what the rest of the resource looks like. What else is included in this larger resource and why they should purchase it. And we start to get really persuasive there too. So now let's talk about previews. For previews on TPT, you can upload an image or multiple images, but it's often great to upload a sort of PDF if you can. Now, in this episode, I'll make it very clear, I'm talking about PDF previews, not video previews. That's kind of like a whole nother topic. Video previews, as just a little segue, I'll just say that they are great for digital resources, crafts, or really kind of hands-on centers where you need to kind of show how things are moving. They're a great bonus, but they are not like this absolute must. TPT has kind of confirmed that they don't have the hugest impact on conversion. So they're a great bonus. They're not something to get stressed out about. PDF previews are a non-negotiable must on every single paid listing. So very different kind of ballgame here. So let's talk about PDF previews. Okay, so we know it's like this, PDF or whatever. And how is that different from me showing these 3 images I've already shown? We've also got to remember with thumbnails that they are sometimes kind of blurry. They're kind of small, like these 3 small little squares. They're not like, buyers can't really get a big, clear, crisp, clear image. And they certainly can't really get like a big zoomed in close up kind of look. That's why I call it like the tip of the iceberg. It's very surface level. So I would say, thumbnails are really just, like I said, a little glimpse. And so it's like this blurry, small kind of, I'm going to intrigue you and see if you like it. And if you like it, you can go and check out the preview. Previews are your deep dive. Previews are your crisp, clear, great quality, much bigger, zoomed in kind of look at the resource. And here are some of the options you can do with previews. One is you can showcase kind of what's included in the entirety of your resource. So you use your thumbnails to say, hey, here's 3 cute images of like these worksheets to see if like you like the look of these worksheets. Great. In the preview, I'm going to talk about, well, there's 50 worksheets here. So what other types of worksheets are you getting? What other activities? So the what is included is the big thing that you can showcase in a preview that you really can't show in a thumbnail. Obviously, if you're resource is really small and it's like this 2-page resource, you can kind of show that in a thumbnail, that's fine. We know for the majority of resources, it's physically impossible to showcase the entirety of that resource and really talk about what's included in these 3 little images with your thumbnail. So that's why previews are really, really great, because you're saying, okay, this is a much bigger resource than what I can showcase there. Here is what you're getting. These are the types of activities. These are the types of worksheets. Here are more photos, screenshots, mock-ups, that kind of thing. And you can go for big blown up images, full page worksheets, maybe that you've watermarked if you want to. You can overlap screenshots to kind of give big picture overviews of like, okay, yeah, there's 50 pages. Like, here are all the different pages, and you can like lay them out so they can see them all. And like, oh, wow, look at all this stuff. So it's a really good opportunity to show what's included in a detailed, really kind of detailed way. I can actually show you everything you need to know about what you're getting. Something that you can't do with a thumbnail. And then the other thing as well with previews is you get this really great opportunity to talk about how the resource can be used, like when can it be used. You can say, hey, it's great for centers, it's great for morning work, whatever. You can kind of list all that sort of stuff. You can throw in testimonials, like, what other people have had to say. You can like copy and paste, like put reviews in there. And then best of all as well, you can use your persuasive copy that you may have written for your description anyway in your PDF preview. So for those of you listening that are seasoned sellers, this is where the shift has happened recently that might be the little reminder for you. Back in the day, we used to just put up like a full page of the resource with like a watermark on it to be like, hey, here's an example of what one of the pages looks like. And of course, we would do the thing where we crammed a lot of tiny screenshots in to sort of show the big picture. And that was kind of it. And that was okay. And that was like the done thing for many years. There has been a shift lately. People have started to realize that TPT is very competitive. You've got to really stand out. So the way we're making previews now has changed a lot in just like the last 2 to 3 years. So now you're seeing a lot more of sellers putting in all this persuasive copy, hitting these buyer pain points, talking about how the buyer has a problem and this TPT resource is the solution. Are you struggling with this? Well, this resource is going to help you. So persuasive copy is like a really great thing to have in your preview. And again, that's something that you cannot show in a thumbnail. It would be impossible to fit all of this wording in there, and you definitely shouldn't, to be like, hey, this is the problem you're having. I'm going to like talk really detailed about it and talk about how I'm going to make your life easier with this resource. And like getting into all of that is just not possible with those 3 little images of your thumbnails. But yeah, preview is a great opportunity for that. So this is where the difference is starting to show, is that you have a lot more opportunity in your preview to give away more information and to kind of quash those hesitancies that a buyer might have, because buyers are going to be like, oh, should I be spending money on this? Can I justify the cost of this? Do I really want this? Do I really need this? Will this really help my students? Like, they're going to have all these doubts with any purchase, obviously, unless it's a freebie. With any purchase, they're going to be kind of secretly wondering, is this worth it, basically? And like I said, thumbnails are just a great opportunity to go, are you interested in this? Do you want to learn more? They can't answer that, is this worth it? Because there's just not enough capacity in 3 small images. Your preview is really great opportunity to convert buyers. And that's why your previews are very strongly connected to your conversion percentage. You have a really low conversion percentage, it means you probably need to work on your preview. So because the previews are the things that convert into sales, we know that TPT has said that, 2/3 of buyers consider it the most important thing when considering purchasing something. If you don't have previews, make them now. They're so important. But yeah, we're getting to this point now where in terms of like the funnel of purchasing buyer behavior, at the top of the funnel is them just kind of discovering your resource. But as we go down, we're getting to the people that are actually considering purchasing. And in order to convert them from just a viewer to a buyer, we have to address all these concerns they have. And the preview is a really great place to do that. And this episode is supposed to be about previews and thumbnails, not descriptions. But I'll just quickly say the difference here between a preview and a description is that the description is just really wordy. You can put as much persuasive copy as you like. You can put all the information I just mentioned in a description, but some people don't like reading. They'll skim and skip. They just that's not their learning style. They don't like reading large chunks of text. Some buyers will just never read a description at all or in its entirety. So a PDF preview it's like a thumbnail and a description had a baby. And it's like this awesome baby, but it's got that, hey, visual element and the written element. So the goal with your previews here is to put in photos, put in screenshots, put in mock-ups, put in all this visual stuff so they can see what you're talking about. But then you also get to add in all these words, add in these text boxes where you're talking about all this stuff. Now, thumbnails aren't so bad. It's like take a few photos or put a few screenshots up. I don't think they're really super overwhelming, but previews can be if you're really overwhelmed at the thought of making a preview. You're like, I really don't know what to include here. I will put a link in the show notes. I have a preview template that you can use. Okay, it's like a Canva template. You can edit it, change all the colors and whatever. And you can also beef it up if you feel like you want to add more pages to flesh out a really expensive product or a bundle or something. But it's a good starting point because I've designed it in such a way that it has the persuasive copy and like taps into loss aversion, all these like psychological marketing things. And yeah, it kind of gives you a nice baseline to work with so you can just kind of input your own photos and your own text and not feel like you're spending 2 hours trying to design this preview template. It's been a game changer for me. I've used it a lot lately on my newer resources. Anyway, grab mine or there's other preview templates out there. Have a little research if you want, or just design your own. That's fine. But it's a great idea to put in the time or all the money, whatever, into having this really great document that is going to convert buyers. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the episode how I don't really love when people just use their thumbnails as previews. And I have to always be careful when I have these opinions because I don't want to like offend anyone or upset anyone. Like, because there's someone out there that was the first person that ever did this and other people have like copied them, or, you know, you may be listening and you're someone that does this and I don't want you to feel like bad or anything. But it's just one of those cases of where you've probably kind of, if you were able to admit this yourself, you've kind of gone for the easy route of like, I'll just throw up my thumbnails as a preview because it's quicker and I don't have to make a preview. And I get that because previews are the worst. Like, they can be so boring and time consuming to make. Hands down, my probably least favorite part of the listing. Love making covers. Don't find product photography that bad. Write out the description reasonably quickly. I'll pick my price. Like, none of that irks me. But making a PDF preview can be bleh. So I get it. And I don't judge you for that kind of wanting to take the easy way out because previews suck. But that's why I'm saying templates are a great way to go. But yeah, sometimes you've got to admit yourself, have I taken the lazy way out of just kind of throwing my thumbnails up as previews? And in doing so, you know, although you've saved yourself 20, 30 minutes or whatever, how much have you lost in revenue because you've basically made the buyer click on this button to look at the preview and then they're just like, oh, it's the same thing, but I guess it's a bit bigger or a bit clearer to see. And it's, for those of you listening thinking like, I just don't see the issue here. I think there's nothing that you can really put in 3 thumbnails that's going to match what you can put in a preview. And you can make some great thumbnails, but they are just never going to address all that stuff I mentioned. It's just not possible to be able to really get great persuasive copy in there, get lots of images, really give a big picture of what's included, talk about how it can be used, like all that stuff I mentioned. You just can't fit that in these 3 images. And so if you are just reusing those 3 images and not doing anything else, there's a lot of gaps here in that funnel. There's like a lot of opportunities for buyers to not want to buy from you, to get really hesitant. There's a lot of questions that go unanswered from their point of view. Your conversion will probably be quite drastically affected. I'm not saying that you'll never have good conversions with that system, but it's going to affect your conversions because it's just not as detailed as it could be. So yeah, this is just my little gentle reminder. Try to make them different. And I'm hoping this episode has given you some insight into how they are different. And they are. One is nice and fun and one is terribly boring. But the boring one is the one that's like really powerful. And I think with previews, you just get that opportunity to make them a lot bigger. And it's like, instead of just having a couple of pages, you can make this a 10-page preview if you want. You've got so much like real estate, so many opportunities almost to get that buyer to purchase from you, because you can really hit all these different angles of, all that hesitancy. Hey, look, this is what it looks like. This is what you get. This is why it's amazing. This is why you need it. This is what other people have to say. Like, there's so many things you can hit on there. A lot of opportunity in the PDF preview to get someone to buy from you. So really worth doing. My little final summary for you, whether you're a newer seller, whether you've been selling for 10 years, whatever, we all know, every single one of you listening, and myself included, we all know there's work to be done on our stores in these areas. We all know that there's probably a listing in your store, if not many or all, I don't know, depends what your situation is, where you've got missing thumbnails and previews. You've got like 1 thumbnail instead of 3. You've got no preview on this bundle that you've made. Like there's probably some missing stuff here. So now is your opportunity to go to your store and fix that problem. And then for those of you like myself who don't have anything missing, I do like to feel pretty confident that every resource in my store has 3 thumbnails and a PDF preview. I can honestly say that there's some really terrible previews in my store. There's old, outdated thumbnails that need updating. Like, we can all admit that. But it's something to get on top of. It's a really worthwhile use of your time. So remember, these 2 things on your listing are very different. They serve very different purposes. One is this quick little glimpse. The other is a very deep dive. And they're both really important, but I'd say PDFs and previews are pretty powerful stuff. So make the time to make them on every listing and to make them good. This is a good use of your time. I could be making an episode about Instagram Reels or whatever, writing your next email to your list, writing a blog post, and that's all great, but that's not guaranteed to bring you money. I mean, making great thumbnails and previews, pretty guaranteed to improve your revenue. So I would go ahead and prioritize that on your to-do list in the coming weeks. Thumbnails and previews are the things to focus on. And if you want to think, okay, I've got a lot here to unpack. I know that Alex has said I've got to fix some of my previews and thumbnails, blah, blah, blah. You kind of know you've got this big to-do list going on. Where do you start? My suggestion is, number 1, start with those missing ones. If there's something that's literally doesn't have a preview, whatever, that's number 1 priority, get that ticked off. And then if you're looking at improving existing thumbnails and previews based on what you've kind of learned today and what you've been reminded of, I would be looking at your data, just going through your conversions. Okay, these resources have really terrible conversions. I probably should update the previews on them, things like that. So have a little look at your data to kind of get an idea of maybe what needs improving. Don't just kind of close your eyes and point to something and hope that it's a resource in your store that needs an update. Get into the data of it. Also, looking at your bestsellers is always a good place to start because they're the ones where you can have the biggest impact. If you make a new preview on your bestseller, that's probably going to bring you more ka-chings than updating the preview on your worst seller, but nobody's even really looking at. So bestseller is another great place to start. Have a look there. But yeah, make sure that your thumbnails and previews aren't the same, that you're not being lazy or anything here, and really make some like great quality images for those thumbnails, really beautiful photos and stuff, but making sure those previews are really persuasive and in-depth, because every buyer that ever wants to purchase something on TPT is sitting there thinking, should I get this? Is it worth it? And you want to kind of dispel all that by going, yeah, there's a lot included here. This is exactly what you're going to get, so that they don't feel like they're not really sure what they're buying. This is another thing that also causes like bad reviews and that kind of, oh, I don't ever want to follow or buy from you again because I bought something and it wasn't what I expected. Like, let's get rid of that by telling them exactly what they're getting. And then, of course, just kind of pushing them over the edge in terms of purchasing. They're thinking, do I need this? Is this really worth it? Is this going to make my life easier? And that's where the persuasive copy comes in. Like, yes, this is going to be a game changer for you. So getting in there with that, I think that's going to be really, really powerful. Anyway, like I said, I'll put a link in the show notes to my preview template, which you can grab. And then throughout this history of this very lengthy podcast I've been making for you guys, I have done episodes in the past on thumbnails and previews. As of quite recently, I did one where I was talking about thumbnails. So definitely be sure to check out all of my episodes if you're kind of going to put this as your like energy and focus at this week. And you're like, I want to update thumbnails and previews. You could go listen to some of my past episodes to get some more specific tips about what makes a good like thumbnail or preview. But anyway, I hope that you have a terrific day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Terrific Teacherpreneur. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate that effort. Come back for more actionable tips and helpful wisdom in the next episode with your host, Alex. Until then.